This is ILTV on the Hour, bringing you the biggest stories from Israel and the Middle East. We are live from Israel. It's currently 2 p.m. here and 7 a.m. in New York. I'm Devo Klein, and today is day 676 of the war in Gaza. Let's get into all of the top headlines of the hour. Israel has released more details on Hamas commander Anas al-Sharif, who posed as an Al Jazeera journalist while directing rocket attacks on Israeli civilians. According to the IDF, Sharif was the commander of a terror cell responsible for advancing rocket and mortar attacks on Israel. All this and more have been published by the IDF in an organized document detailing his participation in various Hamas terror activities dating all the way back to 2013, when Sharif first enlisted to Hamas. The documents include personnel rosters, records of Hamas training camps, phone directories, and salary documents, all showing al-Sharif to be a combatant and commander for Hamas. The evidence of Sharif's activities with Hamas have led to his elimination in a targeted airstrike near the Jabalia camp. Also eliminated in the strike were 6 other Hamas terrorists. Despite the IDF sourcing and citing all of the information they publish, international media is still ignoring this evidence, and journalists and from Reporters Without Borders claim that these findings by the IDF had been previously refuted, but the document released by the Israeli military is not the only evidence to prove al-Sharif's terror activities, as independent journalists, NGOs, and watchdogs are all uncovering additional information. A Telegram post by Anas al-Sharif resurfaced, further intensifying the IDF's claim. The tweet reads, quote, 9 hours and the heroes are still roaming the country, killing and capturing. This was posted on October 7th. Hamas, or not any person who claims themselves a journalist and then continues on to praise the murder and kidnapping of innocents, is abhorrent. Another video is making its rounds, this one taken from the release ceremony of Israeli hostage Agam Berger, a last-ditch effort by Hamas to humiliate and dehumanize the Israeli hostages before releasing them to the Red Cross. Sharif is seen standing alongside the Hamas terrorists, and just meters from Agam Berger, he has clearly been granted exclusive access to document the ceremony. This is a Hamas-certified journalist. And the IDF Arabic spokesperson also released images of al-Sharif with Yahya Sinwar, the butcher of Khan Yunis. The two share an embrace and a smile. Sinwar was the head of Hamas's military wing before he was eliminated by the IDF in October of 2024. And if all of this is not enough, let's take a listen to what the Gazan population thinks of Sharif. Have a listen.
كما تشاهدون الناس عامة الناس تسأل عن أنس شريف مراسل قناة الجزيرة، مراسل قناة الجزيرة. عامة الشعب لا يريد قناة الجزيرة. ها هو أحد المواطنين يقول أن الصحافة قناة الجزيرة لقد دخلت المستشفى لعدم تغطية الحدث.
Gazans are clearly not fooled. They know that Anas al-Sharif was not who the international community is praising him to be. He was not a voice for the Palestinians. He was a voice for Hamas. And meanwhile, the war in Gaza is continuing. The IDF are eliminating terror cells and dismantling Hamas infrastructure in both northern and southern Gaza. All this while the IDF prepares for the Gaza City takeover as instructed by the Security Cabinet earlier this week. IDF Chief of Staff Eyal Zamir reiterated the war goals of dismantling Hamas and returning all of the hostages, ensuring that the IDF is ready to accomplish all of these goals in the best way possible. Zamir's announcement comes amid rising tensions between the IDF Chief of Staff and the Defense Minister Israel Katz. Katz slammed Zamir for advancing a round of senior IDF appointments, claiming it's against protocol. And U.S. President Donald Trump has yet to oppose or agree with Netanyahu's Gaza City takeover plan, although the two leaders did have a phone call last night. Trump told Axios that the call was, quote, a good call, but did not reveal his stance on the current plan of the IDF for the war in Gaza. Trump did tell Axios, though, that he does not think Hamas will agree to any form of deal to release the hostages. The comments from Trump follows Netanyahu's press conference to international media earlier this week, in which the Israeli Prime Minister reportedly hardened his stance on the elusive deal. According to Netanyahu, Hamas clearly does not want a deal, something that is evident through their hasty rejections and posing of impossible conditions to reach an actual deal. Netanyahu is now interested in releasing all 50 hostages, living and dead, and until Hamas can show good faith, Israel will not participate in negotiations. And joining us now to discuss all of these developments is Aviv Bushinsky, former media advisor and chief of staff to Prime Minister Netanyahu. Aviv, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Deborah.
Sure. So the Prime Minister just held a press conference for international media after nearly 2 years of a multi-front war where Netanyahu was responsible for the well-being of all Israelis. So first, I wanted to ask you, as someone who worked for years as the closest aide to the Prime Minister, how does Netanyahu look and sound in your opinion?
I think that you should divide it to two. His press conference with the foreign media was pretty productive. There's a lot to explain to the foreign world. Do we starve the Gaza people? What Israel intends to do in Gaza, and how we conduct the war. So I think that in this aspect, Netanyahu's press conference was very good. Unfortunately, to the Israeli people in Israel, the press conference in Hebrew, and by the way, it's the first time that Netanyahu does it vice versa, first in English and then in Hebrew, though our mother tongue in Israel, it's still Hebrew. I think that he failed to deliver the message. Still people were quite confused what are the real goals and how Netanyahu is about or attempts to achieve those goals, especially both to eliminate the Hamas and bringing back all the hostages, the ones who are alive and unfortunately the bodies that are still being held by the Hamas. I think that still we didn't get a clear answer. And also there is the October 7th, 2025 ultimatum that means that if by then nothing will happen, Israel will conquer, liberate, take over the remaining of Gaza, and nobody knows how Israel will do it, how long it will take, and how many soldiers will we need in order to execute this plan. So I think that people are still confused.
Absolutely. All that actually coming up very soon. But I do want to ask you first about the timing of this press conference. Why now? What's the significance really of this press conference? I mean, given the fact that we know that Hasbara is not Israel's strong suit, it never has been. So what's your take on the timing of this press conference? Is it only to discuss the Gaza starvation and the recently released videos of hostages Ron Baslavsky and Aviv David, perhaps?
First of all, this was too little too late. Our Hasbara is very weak, and Netanyahu was asked about it, and he claimed that a bunch of clerks are dealing with Hasbara as if Netanyahu, the godfather of Hasbara, neglected it, and I think that this should be part of the Israeli warfare, and in some aspect it's even more important who deals with the Israeli Hasbara, PR, public opinion, etc., more important than who's the individual who, I don't know, the commander of the intelligence in Israel. This is a major factor that Israel neglects, and you cannot say that, okay, we always in a lose-lose situation, so why should we deal with it? This is one thing. And I think that, I looked at the calendar last time that Netanyahu did deliver a press conference was exactly 80 days before the previous one, the one that was held a couple of days ago. So it raised the expectations that Netanyahu will deliver a clear message to the Israelis. If Jules Verne managed to circle the world in 80 days, you should expect something like that to happen when we are in the midst of a war. I think that Netanyahu did not prepare himself properly to this conference. Maybe he has the right approach and the best ideas. He knows what he's doing. People still trust him in what he does. but I think yet he failed to deliver. I think he was a bit cornered because the cabinet has decided this extreme act in taking over Gaza, and people in Israel asked for some answers. Netanyahu was not prepared thoroughly to give these answers. I hope that in the coming days we'll understand what's going on. But I can tell you one thing, Deva, for sure. Netanyahu tries to put lots of pressure on the Hamas. Maybe they'll bend down and show some flexibility. This is the main goal at the moment.
Absolutely. And, I actually wanted to touch on something you mentioned, because as you know, you've seen Netanyahu under pressure before, and he's now navigating a very fractured coalition, to say the least, really. We have, right-wing ministers pushing for total occupation of Gaza and pressure from left-wing protesters to protect the hostages. And we have the IDF chief of staff and the defense minister throwing jabs at each other. It's not really been easy for him, to say the least. So in your opinion, is Netanyahu making the right moves? Is there maybe more that he could be doing to show a more united front, at least on the political side?
It's a good question. First of all, if you decide to apply to the job, beware that it is a tough job. But going back to your question, I think he can. If you look at the polls, most Israelis think that we should do a one deal and one shot, as we say, everything for everybody. In other words, just leave Gaza, get the hostages back, and then by a miracle we'll be able to come back, fight again, and eliminate the Hamas. I think that in this aspect, Netanyahu fails to explain that maybe, from his point of view, this is not a feasible plan. This is one thing. The second thing is, yes, he has a far extreme right-wingers in his coalition. I think that he should at least demand that their rhetoric will be less extreme by sending a atomic bomb on Gaza or liberating Gaza and build new settlements. These things are very bad from the international point of view. And the last thing is that I think that Netanyahu should try and at least fetch for other partners like Benny Gantz that a little bit lost his orbit in the Israeli politics. And even if he'll get a negative answer, at least the approach will be seen as a positive approach. And the last thing, mentioning the Israeli fragile coalition, the far right wingers, though they're very vocal, it is not a real threat on Netanyahu's coalition, because even now, Netanyahu coalition is almost a kind of a minority coalition, because the religious party is disengaged because of the service law. But those parties, the religious and Smotrich and Ben Gvir, they have no alternative. So they will not dissolve the Knesset anyway. So I don't think that this is a real threat for Netanyahu. And one interesting component I can add, that while I was working for Netanyahu, by the way, it was in the finance ministry, Netanyahu tried to initiate a general referendum, ask the Israeli people what do they think. I don't think that this time Netanyahu will initiate this thing, because, as I said, most people in Israel think that we should terminate the war, and whatever will be, will be.
Absolutely. And, I wanted to touch on what you said about the draft law for the ultra-Orthodox. It's with all of this preparation that the IDF is undergoing to take over Gaza City, it's been made very clear that we will need more manpower, more boots on the ground. So is it at all surprising to you? Are you surprised that Netanyahu has been so unsuccessful in reaching a deal with his, Haredi partners to draft meaningful numbers to the IDF?
First of all, you don't need to ask me. You can ask Netanyahu. Netanyahu stated 4 months ago that we are very close for reaching some kind of a deal with the religious parties, and yet he failed. Now he appointed a new head of the Security Committee, Foreign and Security Committee, and he raised the expectations of the religious parties that they'll be able to get all the exams from serving in the IDF that they are possible on Earth. I think that Netanyahu, the way he his approach is wrong. He tries to embrace mainly Minister Deri because maybe he can deliver some things in the cabinet. I don't know what, but yet the people in Israel are furious that, as you mentioned, Devo, if Israel will go back to full-scale fight in Gaza, it means that we'll need quarter of a million soldiers in order to execute it. How can you do it? So this is the wrong thing, and my gut feeling is that Netanyahu, not only that he will not be able to reach a resolution in which we'll have a normal new law with affirmative sanctions, so not only that he will not be able to reach it, but most likely will the next elections that will come either on March or on October, this will be part of the theme in the next election, and this is a big burden on Netanyahu's politics for unable to solve this thing that really hurts almost every family in Israel. I think that Netanyahu could have done better. He made a mistake. He blamed others when he was asking the press conference, what about it? So he said, okay, now finally we are trying to tackle this problem that was neglected by politicians for many years. But I think that since the first man on moon landed in '72, Netanyahu was almost in office, and yet he neglected it. So it's a big mistake that he made, and people think that the fact that he failed doing so, it is all politics. Knowing Netanyahu, I think he could do way, way more because he may be the only one that can unite the right wingers, the religious parties, and reach some kind of a resolution.
Well, I actually completely agree with that one. But I do want to turn to Bibi's relationship with Trump for a moment, because they just had a phone call last night, and Trump said it was a good phone call. Trump has been very vocal during Israel's war with the Islamic Republic of Iran, as you can recall. But now we're hearing less and less of him. Why do you think that is? Does Trump just not have a stance on what is happening right now with the Gaza war?
First of all, it seems that Trump, is now went to the next page. The next phase, he has Putin, and he just made some kind of a peace agreement, that very unique one. And he sees that in the Middle East, maybe it's way, way complicated, or the individuals are way more complex and have other issues and limitations. I still think that Netanyahu and Trump see eye to eye. I saw a quote by Trump saying that there's no way that the Hamas will still exist, and he even hinted that if he was the Prime Minister of Israel, he would act differently. I think that his hint was that even going all in, so to speak, in Gaza, even at the expense of the live hostages, Israeli hostages that are there. So, first of all, from the Israeli point of view, we should all be happy that we have such a supportive president. You ask if he lost interest. Trump wants success, wants results. He's a businessman, and as I said, no result or tangible result were produced. I still think that whatever deal that Netanyahu administration will struck, Trump will support. And also, even though it's not, Netanyahu didn't admit it in the last conference call, press conference that they had a couple of days, still they are fetching for another phase of an agreement. This is an issue because if we'll have another phase, then the extreme right wingers, in other words, Smotrich maybe will resign or will disagree. But this is what Netanyahu and Trump are fetching for. I think that to summarize it, Trump didn't lose interest in Israel, but he sees that he can perhaps get more success elsewhere.
Yeah, it's interesting that you're saying that Trump would support, the moves that Netanyahu does decide to go through with, but he hasn't actually officially said it, where in the past he actually has voiced significant support for Israel's, war goals of dismantling Hamas, of returning the hostages, and it seems that now it's more quiet.
Yeah, it's true, but if you recall, I think last week they said that there was a very tense phone discussion between the two leaders about the starvation in Gaza, whether there is or not. And it was quoted that Trump said, Bibi, I saw the pictures, and he didn't really buy the Netanyahu's argument that it's all fake, or maybe there's hunger but not starvation or famine or whatever it is. So there is some tension, but in terms of the general approach, Netanyahu and the ones who support Netanyahu should be very happy that we have a president like Trump, a ambassador to Israel like Huckabee, the deputy vice president. So I think that Netanyahu has the leverage to do whatever he'll decide to do, unlike happened in the previous administration. The question is, will Netanyahu use this leverage or the freedom to decide what is good for him, what is good for the country, or will extend it forever? And then maybe the American administration will, one, lose interest, as you mentioned. Two, some will say, as it were said by even some Republicans, hey, enough is enough, we should stop delivering the tons of armament to Israel. Maybe by this they'll understand that it's about to end the war that lasts almost 2 years.
Will he use the leverage or won't he? Great questions. Aviv Bushinsky, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
And Israeli universities and companies have announced today that they will join the nationwide strike on Sunday. The families of the hostages have called for the strike to take place in response to the plan to take over Gaza City. Wix, Fiverr, and Meta, all from the high-tech sector, said they would join the strike, as well as Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Ben Gurion universities, who will also participate. Dozens of local government heads across the country, including the mayor of Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Tveria, are also joining in. But Israel's main labor federation, called Histadrut, said they will not be joining the strike, but did say they will support any worker who chooses to join from their own merit. Let's go now to our ILTV correspondent, Shosh Bedrosian, who is standing by with more information on the strike and the ongoing negotiations for a hostage deal. Shosh, what are the families of the hostages saying right now in regards to the strike and also in regards to ongoing negotiations?
Sure. So hundreds of thousands of people here in Israel are expected to join forces with this October 7th council that's made up of the families of fallen soldiers, families of hostages, and families who were victims of October 7th, leading this march to take a nationwide protest against these new offensive plans in Gaza City, these new plans approved by the Security Cabinet here in Israel to take over Gaza City militarily. Of course, one of the reasons why for the families of fallen soldiers, Devo, they're on strike is because they don't want any other soldiers injured in this war. There have been hundreds of soldiers who have been killed in battle inside of Gaza, not only just in battle, but because of the explosives that are left behind in some of these buildings, that when Hamas leaves buildings, they still booby trap them. That's how a lot of these soldiers are being wounded and being killed, but also the families of hostages, right? We know that 20 hostages are still believed to be alive at this point in time. It's very possible they could be located in these Hamas stronghold cities, such as Gaza City, but also in some of the refugee camp locations in the central part of the enclave as well, one of the other locations. So the families of hostages are extremely worried. We've seen some of these horrific propaganda videos you're seeing on your screen right now. That's Ron Braslavsky. Before we saw Evyatar Zavim, whose bones are nearly sticking out of his body. They're so horrific. And these families are worried, Devo, that if there's any type of IDF operation that gets close to where these hostages are located, it could put their life in more jeopardy. You know, Israel is marking almost the 1 year since 6 hostages were murdered in captivity when IDF troops were nearby in Rafah, called the Beautiful Six. That includes Hersh Goldberg, Poland, one of the American hostages.
Absolutely. So, Shosh, I want to ask you, what do you make of these reports in the Israeli media, actually, that are claiming that Netanyahu and Dermer believe that there is no point to pursue, any partial deal with Hamas, and that Netanyahu is now demanding all 50, living and dead, or there is basically nothing to discuss? I mean, we know that Hamas have sent a delegation to Cairo. So what's going on now with negotiations? Is that an option, or is it just up to the IDF?
Sure. I think the comments that you're hearing from Israel about wanting a comprehensive deal is actually in line with what the Trump administration wants. You're looking at Steve Witkoff on your screen right now. This is a recent meeting he had in Tel Aviv with Netanyahu. Witkoff actually told the families of hostages that he and the Trump administration want a full comprehensive deal to not only end the war in one batch, but to get all of the hostages out without any piecemeal deals, without any phases. This time it's an all or nothing deal, meaning bringing home all 50 hostages, the dead and the living, and ending the war once and for all. So the comments that we've heard from Netanyahu and his team are very much in tune, very similar to what the Trump administration is saying. It seems as if the negotiations with Hamas at this point in time, phases aren't helping. Remember, there have been major differences in negotiations just in the last 2 weeks between Israel and Hamas. Hamas actually came back to the table in Doha, Qatar, in response to the American-backed proposal, basically saying, hey, we want more prisoners than what we actually agreed on earlier. That was being reported as one of the points that needs to go back to the negotiating table, even though this was a point that was already established earlier on in the negotiations. So basically, both administrations, both governments are in line with both of them. Nothing comes as a surprise for that. But in terms of negotiations, Devo, I find it very fascinating that between now and when these evacuations of Palestinians in Gaza City will likely be completed, will be in the beginning of October. So that leaves us about a month and a half of when the IDF could probably go into Gaza City. Some people are actually reporting that this is a positive thing, that there's enough time where a deal could be reached if both parties can get back to the same place and jump over these hurdles and obstacles that were once standing in the way between them to reach this hostage and ceasefire deal. So there's enough time where possibly a deal could be reached. That's likely why Hamas is interested in coming back to the table. Some media outlets are reporting that it doesn't seem as if this is a bluff, this military operation in Gaza City. It seems as if the IDF is actually serious about going in, but maybe it makes Hamas a bit fearful, and that's why they want to revive these negotiation points. Deva?
Absolutely. Thank you, Shosh, for that report, as always, giving us the very valuable information that we all need. Thank you, Shosh. And for our final story of the hour, France has reportedly halted work visas for El Al security personnel in Paris over the past 6 months. The ban mainly focuses on ITAN workers, that's ITAN, who serve Israeli diplomatic missions. Now, the Israeli Foreign Ministry has said that it's working with French authorities to try and resolve the issues. And there were also comments by the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee. Huckabee posted on X to comment about this event. He says, quote, "Say it ain't so, France. Say it ain't so. What happened to France?" Well, Ambassador Huckabee, I think that we're all wondering the same thing. What has happened to France? Now, these visa bans have been happening for 6 months, and this is a new report that just broke. But they're called a silent ban because they have been happening for 6 months. And the El Al workers have been finding alternative ways to get those visas and enter the country legally, with no help, obviously, from the French government. And that is it for this edition of ILTV on the Hour. We'll continue giving you the most important updates coming out of Israel and the Middle East. This is a region that never sleeps, but for now you can keep up with us on our ILTV app. Just scan the QR code that is on your screen right now to get access to all of our content for more updates and breaking news always every day. I'm Devo Klein. This is ILTV News. I want to thank you all for watching, and I want to encourage you all to continue keeping up with ILTV on the hour. We're giving you updates every hour on the hour, all the news coming out of Israel. Thanks for watching, and I will see you again very soon.